Hi, Dr. Yas here. I'd like to just give a brief history or background to how I ended up developing the Yas method so that people can see that it almost appears like my life's long journey has been a path towards this understanding, and that it almost appears that I was meant to gain this understanding and spread it amongst those people who are suffering from chronic pain. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in any area. I just want you to understand the points in my view that led me to garner this understanding outside of the educational constraints that exist, in which everybody else is simply getting the education and treating based on the education and training they've gotten, where I went completely away from that and developed this method. So basically, to understand me from a child, I was an exceptionally thin kid. I was that 99-pound weakling who basically always got sand kicked in his face and developed some self esteem issues, and recognized at some point in my latter teen years that I needed to change my perception of myself. And the only way I was going to do that was through getting stronger, making muscle, improving my self confidence. So, where the average person typically goes to magazines or books from Joe Weider or Arnold Schwarzenegger or other weightlifting individuals and simply tries to mimic what they're told, because I had a unique mindset, which was taught to me by my father, which was simply the idea that if you need information, find the information, get the information, and create information if need be. So I basically took a high school physics course and started applying physics laws to weightlifting, understanding that the force of the weight is a force vector, the amount of resistance I was pushing, and I wanted to try to understand how to push directly against that. What's the proper position of a limb or a joint to allow that to happen? Understanding kinetic and potential energy, fulcrums and lever arms, and all this stuff. And quite fortunately, over a 4 year period, I was able to put on 40 pounds of muscle. I went from 160 pounds to 200 pounds. This occurred while I was in my original career as a project manager in construction. That was my first degree and my first occupation. Well, over about a 5 year period, I became disillusioned with it, didn't think that that was the path. I started basically just working for the check, and you can't be very happy in that regard. So I decided to quit. And at that point, in my late 20s, and I find out about this thing called physical therapy, and find out that the amount of education needed isn't as extensive as necessary to become a physician. So you still get to work with people's bodies, but you don't have to go to that extent of education. So I decided to go for that. Now, this is happening right after I've developed this fairly intense high level of scientific understanding about weightlifting and the way muscle works and joints and things like that. So I enter school, physical therapy school, at 30 years old. And the other thing that really made me unique and stand out, beyond the fact that I was 30 and not 18, so I had a certain level of maturity and life experience. And the unique thing that I had was that my father taught me logical and analytical thinking when I was a child, which is to say that every bit of information that enters my brain basically runs through a logical lens. It either makes sense and is logical, or it doesn't make sense and it's not factual. And what this kind of does is it creates an environment where you don't really work on opinion. It doesn't matter who says what. It doesn't matter how a person or an organization is perceived as to whether what they're saying is valid or not. It's basically everything is based on natural science laws. You're trying to understand things, not accept things as fact because others said it. And so as I entered school, this put me in a very unique position. So I wasn't the type of student who was simply just taking the notes, trying to memorize the information and pass the test. I was actually listening and determining, was that valid? Is there a logical basis for what's being said? Or is it simply not basis and I can't accept it? And fairly quickly on, especially when it came to the way that diagnoses were being derived to identify the cause of pain and other symptoms, it just became clear that this idea was just baseless. There was no logical reasoning behind it. It made me become hesitant. And the culmination of this concern was when I finally reached my affiliation period, which is just before you're going to graduate. Now you're actually going to be asked to treat people. So now the person's in front of you and they're describing their symptoms, and they came with a diagnosis derived from an X-ray or MRI that was given by the referring physician. So maybe at the knee they're being diagnosed with with a meniscal tear in the back, or herniated disc, or pinched nerve, or something of this nature. And because of this passion for learning and wanting to understand things, I did what I would think was the most logical thing to do, which was to simply say to the person, tell me where your pain is, point to where your pain is. And as a result of asking this question, I was seeing that where they were pointing to their pain was not where the pain should be if the structural abnormality identified on the X-ray or MRI were to create pain. Literally, the pain that the person was experiencing was different than where the pain should be if a structural variation identified were to create pain. This blew my mind. This happened right away, and it put me in a terrible quandary. I'm literally just at the point of graduating, and actually subsequent to graduating, treating people for the first time. And I'm put in this position of trying to say, do I do what I was educated to do because that's what I was trained to do? Or do I need to investigate what is being presented empirically, what the person is describing as to where their pain is and what brings on their pain, and a whole host of other things that helped you understand the symptoms that were being experienced? And I just felt compelled that I do what I think is the right thing to do, which is to investigate and understand the actual symptoms being experienced. And I started to almost immediately recognize the person just constantly were telling me that their symptoms were associated with some deficit of activity. Oh, if I stood too long, I had pain. If I went upstairs, I had pain. If I kneeled, I had pain. If I sat too long, I had pain. If I sat at a computer, I had too much pain. If I reached in front of me, I had pain. If I reached behind me, I had pain. Everything they were saying was associated with some level of dysfunction. And because the last 4 years I had been lifting weights and had this understanding of muscle, and because when they were pointing to where they had the pain, it seemed that they were pointing to muscle, I started leading towards the idea that pain may be associated with muscle, and recognize that muscular deficits don't show up on diagnostic tests. And it was kind of that understanding, this clarity of thought, this free will to be willing to understand this stuff, which led me to begin to develop the method. And a year and a half after graduating, I opened my own facility, and that allowed me to be free to do what I wanted, because of the awareness that developed from people coming that there was this guy who could diagnose, and it was great because he's finding the cause is muscle, and people are getting out of pain in a treatment or two treatments, and they're fully functional. Word spread, and the people that wanted to come, I didn't have to worry about doctors referring to me. We simply said, just go to your primary care and get a prescription, and that would be enough for me to go in and do the diagnostics and everything else. And that's basically what happened. And eventually, I ended up writing 3 books: Overpower Pain, The Pain Cure RX, and The Yas Method for Pain-Free Movement. The last 2 are published by Hay House, second largest publisher in the world. I ultimately performed a PBS special, which aired between 2015 and 2017, called The Pain Prescription. And you certainly can Google all this information and see it there. Subsequent to that, I've written for an international magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You. I've done a couple, I believe, 4 articles for them, which are the cover stories for the magazine. In fact, they 2 years ago invited me. They did their first live show to help people understand alternative means of addressing health issues, and I was invited to England to present there. I write for Bottom Line Health, and have a very strong relationship with them. Bottom Line Health is the largest subscription newsletter in the United States. So, due to this unique understanding, I have gained a substantial amount of awareness and credential and credibility. And I just want people to understand that the information that I utilize and that I want people to utilize in the tribe is based on a tremendous, tremendous level of theoretical, clinical, and scientific evidence, and has been empirically proven to be correct, and works with thousands of people over a 28-year experience. So I want people to look at this as an opportunity to interface with an individual that has a fairly substantial credential backing, has tremendous levels of empirical evidence to show that what they do makes sense, and is giving you the opportunity to interface, to ask questions, to get the information, to utilize the information so that you can be pain-free and fully functional. Again, the tribe is your tribe. It's there for you to get the information you need so you could have the quality of life that everybody deserves this. Just because the medical system has decided to go a certain path and is not able to achieve the understanding to make you pain-free and fully functional, that doesn't mean that you're not entitled to be pain-free and fully functional. And this is your chance. This is your opportunity. So please, please take the opportunity. Learn from the information provided. Seek care if necessary. But whatever it takes, please understand this is your chance to have the life you so justly deserve. For now, this is Dr. Mitchell Yas wishing you a pain-free, fully functional life. Bye-bye for now.